Thank you very much, D-Man. Guys, I gotta say, I am incredibly impressed with the Supa Hot crew right now. Even though they got some targeted bans, top lane bans coming in against them, Aurelia, a Jax, a Xin Zhao, a Yasuo, and a Lulu that are not top lane bans. Xin Zhao can play top.
You tried.
Yeah, indeed. So the Lulu coming in for Selfie. The Xin Zhao, of course, for Impaler played very well, and Yasuo Selfie likes to play, but it didn't do all that much for C9 once again. What did you think of their game plan coming in with the Nidalee over there, but they really couldn't get themselves going?
I think Nidalee is a good pick, but you need to have the team comp needs to fit because you want to siege, and if you fall behind as a Nidalee, you have no wave clear, and especially if 4 people or something rotate into your lane and they take your tower, there's nothing you can do. But Fizz versus Nidalee is actually a really good matchup for him because he has free farm. Like 1-on-1, Fizz wins the lane because he farms up and scales way harder than Nidalee into late game.
100% agree with Dexter. I mean, one of the reasons Fizz is popular now or being played is because of Nidalee. So you can take him against free farm the lane. You can even later on then just start split pushing around. Fizz is one of the strongest mages going into the late game. So that's a really good counter pick here from Selfie. And of course, him getting the first blood helps. Yeah. And he just continued to go from there. And the whole comp from Cloud9 was very good if you got into late game. But then Supa could simply just shut them down early mid-game. And when you lose all the lanes so hard, and you lose the map control so hard, there's actually nothing you can do.
There's actually some resemblances with yesterday when Millennium went down in the first game and then they totally changed their game plan around and barely made it in that game too, thanks to Nocturne and Ryze. But you're still not a fan, Dexter.
Yeah, it's too late game. If you want to have a carry jungler, you need strong lanes. And if you want to have a farmed Ryze, you need a strong jungler. And if you have a Ryze playing 1-on-1, then he needs a lot of help because he will get camped for sure. And even in a lane swap, it's good. And Ryze can freeze the lane for 20 minutes, but at the same time, you keep your jungle behind because he has to push the tower for like 5 minutes and doesn't stack his Feral Flare at all. And yeah, he won't be the help Ryze at all. And I think it's too late game. You just need like a more mid-game oriented team comp.
Well, I like the idea about going more late game for them because they showed in game 1 when they had their pick comp with LeBlanc, with Kha'Zix, they couldn't really play the map well enough. So I like the fact they went more for team fights and they went more for, if we get ahead early game, we can start sieging down the tower with Nidalee, we can force them to fight us, and then we have this very strong comp with Ryze as well, who can go in there and obviously scales well into a late game. So I like the idea. But again, when you're actually getting outclassed against Supa Hot crew in the lanes, there's just nothing you can do here. So they need to come in for the third game now and just either they need to go for comfort picks where they know they can perform, or they just have to try and pick very strong laners and think, okay, we just need to win the laning phase now and then see what happens. I mean, I'm not sure what they actually should do, and that's why they're also behind.
Well, that's fine, because we have the Oracle here, Dexter, who yesterday predicted everything that Millennium should do. So, Dexter, do you have any ideas? Because when you're falling behind in those lanes individually, there is not a lot you can do.
The problem is preparation coming into the games, and in the weeks of practice, you prioritize champions, and you can't change that in like 2 games because world-class teams can do that. They can adapt to it. Like a team like Fnatic could do it, or Gambit. But it's really hard for someone or for a team that is an amateur scene to actually shift priorities between games. And yeah, I think they had a game plan already figured out, and they need to execute it properly. Like the team comps are there; they have like solid picks, but the execution is lacking. So
yeah, and just to add to what Dexter is saying here, NIP yesterday, they never went for something like a Jax, never went for Ryze, never went for Nocturne, Kha'Zix. All the picks Millennium used to beat them, NIP couldn't adapt and pick them up themselves. They didn't actually play them, I believe. So it seems to be the thing here for the challenger teams, at least in Europe. The champion pools are not as, as deep as the LCS teams, and also the comps they can use doesn't seem to be there. So once they actually fall behind, once something doesn't work for them, they don't really know what to do to adapt.
Yeah, strategy, of course, and preparation is one thing, and what's in your head is another thing. How can you adapt mentally? And that's also something we asked you guys at home at the top of today's show on Twitter. Which team has a psychological advantage in a promotion series and why? And here are some of the responses you sent in. The first one is from @YepIt'sJustGen. Supa Hot crew have the advantage. They have already handled great pressure from being in the LCS so far, and Mr. Raleigh is an insane AD carry. I love watching his Lucian, straight up.
Well, I think they're showing here, why they have the advantage. They again, they come in with a very good plan. They seem to have answers for whatever Denial did. Oh, Denial, not Cloud9, I mean.
That's later.
Yeah, that's later. Whatever Cloud9 is doing. I mean, Cloud9 first pick in Italy here, and they just said, you know what, we can just play Fizz. We just save it for our last pick. So they got 2 very strong picks again, Leona and Lucian. So for them, they seem to have answers to whatever Cloud9 is doing, and also they seem to play very confident.
The second one is from @JustinMinglador. #LCS advantage to C9E and Denial. Copenhagen Wolves and Supa are essentially fighting for their lives. It's either perform or panic. Don't know if I 100% agree, because if you've lived the LCS life, you of course don't want to give it up. Right, Dexter?
You don't want to give it up,
yeah.
No matter what happens. I think it's way harder to get into LCS than to drop out. Like, I talked with a lot of players, and everyone agrees it's like way harder to actually drop out than to get into the LCS. It's way harder than to drop out, because you get a lot of experience and it's basically a job. And you're not like an amateur who has like, you spend way more game time, actual game time of playing as a LCS team and living together, and you have more resources, so it's way easier to stay into LCS, and we see that here.
Yeah.
And you get the absolute best practice. Every week you play the best teams in your region, and it can get better.
Absolutely. Well, maybe if you can't make it in here, you can try out for some North American team. Last one is from @HMX Constantine. The Wolves have the biggest advantage. Oldest franchise competing. Some of the most talented players in Europe. We'll, of course, see the Copenhagen Wolves going up versus Denial later on.
And we talked about it earlier, how Forgiven and Amazing are among the best in Europe at their position. Those two, so strong players. Unless Denial can actually shut them down early on in the games, they will be able to do a lot for Copenhagen Wolves. And I think it's what we're going to see later on as well. That's why we predict Copenhagen Wolves to win.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. And thank you to you guys at home and everyone who answers. Remember to follow us @LOL Esports and use that #LCS to keep the conversation going. It's time for a short caster cooldown, and then it's on to Game 3 between the Supa and Cloud9. Will the Supa head back to the LCS, or will C9 Eclipse stage a comeback? Don't go anywhere. We'll find out soon.